McKay, and welcome back to Survive to Thrive. Today, I am absolutely thrilled to interview Karen Iverson. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you so much, Kate. I am so honored to be on your show. I just love your personality and your interviews are just amazing. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. It wouldn't be possible without freaking amazing people like you reaching out and saying, hey, wait a minute, let me be on your show.
Yeah,
So I love that. I appreciate your tenacity, Karen. It's awesome. So I'm going to do a little bio about Karen, and then we're going to get right into it. So Karen is an author, a coach, an artist, and an actress, which love that. She holds a master's degree in education from Columbia University's Teaching College and a bachelor's degree from the University of New Hampshire, where she studied microbiology and English. She's an artist in most senses of the word. She loves to paint and draw and is trained in photography as well, and has worked as an actress and a singer. She is the author of the books, Winning the Breast Cancer Battle, Empowering Warriors and Guiding Loved Ones, and really excitingly, the newest release, which is going to be released in October, which is Winning the Breast Cancer Battle Companion Journal. Oh, I love it. Empowering and Guiding Warriors, with the goal of assisting breast cancer patients and their loved ones as they navigate the illness. Karen currently teaches for a virtual school and is finishing her master's in clinical mental health counseling to further or expand her holistic coaching style and practice. Pretty cool, Karen.
Thank you.
Well, we had a good laugh before because I love the Strength Finder, and of course she's a learner, so she loves it too, right, Karen?
That's
so both of us are learners, and we're talking about like our piles of knowledge, like we can't get enough of it. And I appreciate that. It will provide us a lifetime of youthful enthusiasm, that's for sure.
It really will. It really will. I love to learn. And if I'm not taking a class, there's something wrong with me. You know?
I know, you're like, my brain is dying. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
My brain is dying.
I actually took a ballet class last night and I just loved it. I'm so excited to be doing ballet again.
See, it's so good. Maybe I'll do that. I was taking African dance classes
fun.
A couple of years ago. It was the hardest thing. It was so hard, and it was the bomb. It was really quite soulful.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're talking about the reason why we set up this podcast is because really it was the beginning of the pandemic, and my commitment was to help and partner with people so that we continue to be change agents in the world. And that's the reasoning why. And I would love to find out, how are you doing during this pandemic COVID crisis? And what's going on with you and how are you managing?
Well, Kate, that's a really good question. And honestly, I have to give an honest answer, and I really wasn't doing very well. I thought I was doing really well because I kept adding more things on my plate and I was super busy. But then what would happen is I would all of a sudden crash and realize I had too much going on and I'd have to start all over again. And I did that almost 3 times before I finally said, you can't keep doing this. You have to take control of your life and cut things out that are not serving your goal and your passion.
Wow. Okay. So tell me what did you have to let go of? Because I'd love to know. It's like we got habits, behaviors, thoughts, all those kinds of things. Sometimes it's monkey mind, sometimes it's project, sometimes it's relationships in our lives that have to go. What was that for you, Karen?
Yes, so it was a little of everything. And it really, when it came to that 3rd time when I was about to crash, I said, wait, you can't take things out from the top because you want to do all of those things. So you have to start at the bottom and only put back in the specific things you really need to be doing. So I took it all off and I started from the base foundation and built back up one thing at a time until I said, okay, you need to now stop. And I wrote myself a note and I said, go slow, please go slow.
Right. And please be nice to yourself.
Yes. And I said, you need to nurture your inner child and you need to do obviously your job because you need to pay your bills. But I also wanted to focus on this new book that's coming out and make sure that that happened because I promised myself I would release it in October for Breast Cancer Awareness Month.
I love that. Right. So being an achiever, right, which is going slow isn't really our natural forte. Right. It's like, we're like, I can do it. I'm not going to tell everybody that I have 15 things going. And honestly, I have to ask you a question. Did you at any point in time feel shame regards to as much as you were handling and what you weren't talking about with people? Because this is a very common trait with high achievers, is that if we ever really told people how many things we're working on, they would think we were out of our minds.
Yes, but it kind of manifested more in me, not so much as shame, but more as like a guilt that I wasn't doing all I could do, and that I was being selfish to myself to choose only the couple things I wanted.
Wow. So how did you, because this is super huge. This is super, super huge for most people to get out of overwhelm. So what did you do to disrupt that system? You know, I'd love it if you would share some action tips on how people can apply this.
Mm-hmm. Well, personally, what I do is I write. And that's something I've been doing my whole life. And so my journaling is a way for me to escape everything that's going around me. And I call them my Dear God journals, and I just journal whatever comes to me. And sometimes it becomes a list, and I make a planning list of things I need to accomplish. And on top of the journaling, I set goals. And so I might in the morning sit there and make a list of the things I want to do that day, knowing that I'm probably not going to be able to do them all, but that then I can take the leftovers and put them back to the next day or reassign them to another day.
So when you're thinking about the journaling, I think a lot of people get stuck on it because they think it has to look a certain way. So your description sounds like it's kind of messy and organic.
Yes.
So what would you advise people in regards to that?
Well, I would advise somebody to do it the way that works for them. Julia Cameron wrote a book, and she mentioned the morning pages. And the thing that I mentioned in my book, Winning the Breast Cancer Battle, the original book, and I mention it in the companion journal as well, is that there's no wrong way to do a journal. And a journal could be paper and pencil where you write in big angry letters, or it can be typing really fast or really slow on the computer. It can be using your smartphone and typing in the notes section your notes, or a journal could even be making a vision board, so cutting out images and words and pasting them down as something to remind yourself of where you want to be or where you're going.
And for those people who talk, my coach gave me a great tip, which is open an email and talk into your email and send it to yourself. I was like, that's brilliant. And I'm telling you, I dictated my entire book of poems that way. Didn't look great when it came out, but it's the way I took my creative energy, because I never learned to type. My ADHD could never sit my ass down and learn the typing skill. So for me, sometimes that journaling is auditory. It's me speaking it.
Yep. And it can be in physical movement too. It can be doing Tai Chi or Qigong, which are considered Chinese, not martial arts, but it's the formation and the foundation of martial arts. And you're just moving your energy around in those type of practices. You mentioned to me earlier about doing a morning ritual, and I go for walks every day. And if I'm too busy in the morning, I make sure I go for the walk in the evening. And during the walks, I will listen to a podcast, and I take notes on my phone while I'm walking because I'm the learner. Yeah. And then I also sometimes will listen to music and just get inspired. And some people driving down the road might think I'm nuts because I start dancing on the street, with along to the music. And then other times I call a friend. And I think that is such an important lifeline, is to talk to your friends. Your friends are there for you. And if they're not there for you, then they shouldn't be your friends.
Right. And then so many relationships. And I would love to talk about, obviously, your own journey with cancer. This is a crucial point, that when we go through any kind of transformation, some tragedy, like for me, it was the loss of my brother, and then concurrently 3 years ago, the loss of my son. So it is such a massive disruption. Cancer, loss of someone, a loved one. People have to realize that nothing's going to be the same.
No.
Relationships fall away that you think were forever. And I would love it if you would talk a little bit about that pivotal time in your life.
Well, I really kind of just became a homebody, if there isn't another word, and seclusive. And I spent my time sitting in my bed reading books, and I read like, as I walked, I read like 0.2 miles per hour. Like, I did not read fast. I, took a long time to read my books because I was in this slow motion sort of period of time going through. And you do learn who you can count on and who you can't count on. Because I was actually in school at the time of my cancer, and I had a friend in my school, and when I was diagnosed, she was like, I'm going to be there for you. I want to support you. And she just fell by the wayside.
Yeah.
And, it happens. And the thing that I want to mention about it is that everybody thinks, well, cancer is so horrible. But there are good things that come out of it. And also, it's not just the cancer patient that suffers. And I mentioned that in my books, Winning the Breast Cancer Battle, that it's the family members, their loved ones, and the caregivers. They suffer just as much, but in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
So my first book was Empowering Warriors and Guiding Loved Ones, because it was for everybody to understand what it was like to go through breast cancer and to get tips on how to work through it, because every chapter has a tips section at the end of it.
Awesome.
And so my new book is the companion journal, and that's specifically for the breast cancer warrior. So she can literally take it to the doctor's office, have questions to ask and spaces to write answers, spaces to write her own questions, places to journal. There's some mandalas in there that she can color. And of course, there's a resource section in it as well.
Sounds amazing. Woo, girl. That's a labor of love. Absolutely. Yeah. So how did you know? I guess I'm curious about how you seem very tapped into yourself, very conscious of your energy. And so were you always that? Did you come out of the box like that? And how did you maneuver life being that high sensitive person?
I think I have always had it in me, though I didn't necessarily recognize it when I was younger and really realize what I was doing until I got older, and had mentors guide me so that I knew what I was doing.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so what behavior or action maybe did you have to let go of, maybe imprinted in you from your family of origin?
I think kind of going really fast, and I still go really fast, and I use that. But when I was younger, I would go to the right and to the left and to the right and straight and back and to the left. And so I couldn't figure out my path. And so I kept trying different paths and trying to make them work. And then I would find out I'm at a dead end. It's not the right path. And I'd have to go back and try something else. Right. So I've been to school a million times, but I'm studying right now to become a counselor, and I do coaching right now. And that study really kind of brings everything together. So I don't think anything I did in the past was a waste, because it just makes me a stronger person to understand what my clients are going through.
Absolutely. It's wonderful. And I think that it is a piece, if you're enthusiastic in your life and you're learning. For me personally, I always felt like people like, oh my God, what's Katie doing now? Oh my God, what she's doing now. It's been my whole life. I'm like, oh my gosh. Well, the piece that I now know is that I go into things with 150% enthusiasm, and I squeeze the life out of it until I have achieved what I want out of that experience. And I no longer feel judged as at such a high level as I did earlier, that like, oh my gosh, she's such a flibberty gibbet, or now what's Katie doing? I'm like, the word enthusiasm, it means in divinity. So it's actually a good thing that I'm enthusiastic and not a negative. And I think that I had that branded in me, that my enthusiasm was actually something to be ashamed of. Like crazy.
Well, it seems very selfish. and it's like, I mean, you mentioned in your book, Kate, that you need to let your inner badass, your inner hottie out. And it's so important to, I think, incorporate your whole body, which you mentioned as well, because it's not just the mind, it's not just the physicalness of it, it's everything all combined, because it all interacts with one another.
Totally does. That's such a friggin' amazing point. It's the holistic approach. And I think, geez, what awesome thing that you're going to incorporate that into, with your new degree, which you've already come into it with so much knowledge base. And I think that's the piece. When you go through life and you go through these really hard challenges, you have something to offer. And it's okay that it may be a new path or a different path. We're here to help others. And I know that's your highest calling as well, particularly in the work that you've done in these two really passionate, well-informed, resourceful books. Because it wasn't available for you. This material that you created was not available for you.
No, and when I went through breast cancer, I didn't know anybody who had breast cancer, or anybody who could guide me. And so that's one of the purposes of the book. One of the main purposes is so that people get some guidance, because the person going through breast cancer needs guidance, because otherwise you feel all alone and you don't know what to do. And I luckily got great doctors and had great support in that matter, but it wasn't until I was almost at the end of chemo that I found a support group. And you have to be really careful about the internet and what the internet tells you, because you need to know if the source of the article you're reading is a valid source or not.
Yes, and that requires some education, some serious education.
Yeah,
that's incredible. So can you talk to me a little bit about this is a Tim Ferriss question. If you're, I'm sure you know him, but because he talks a lot about the morning papers. And, for audiences and listeners, the morning papers by Julia Cameron, it's her book. Is it The Artist's Way? What's it called?
The Artist's Way.
Highly recommend it. I'm sure you do too, because morning papers is exactly what you were talking about, Karen, about how the process is the creative communication. And I was also a theater major, and I built a multi-million-dollar company, and I didn't realize, because in my family, it was the creatives were the fine arts. So I didn't realize that the creative was actually theater, or even developing a business. And I think to anyone out there who feels like they're not creative, if you grow a company, that's as creative as it comes, especially if you're bringing people along and driving revenue and coming up with a system for your success. I think that that's super crucial. So could you describe to me, Karen, your favorite failure, or any kind of story that you'd like to share around a failure? I know it's hard for us to think of failure because we're like, oh, we just learned something. But would you have a place that really was pivotal in your transformation?
Well, I'm an educator, and I work for a virtual school, but I didn't always work for a virtual school. And I taught several different subjects. I taught science, I taught social studies, I taught art. My main forte was art, but I did teach the others as well. And I think my biggest failure has been in letting down my students. It is hard to teach a classroom full of students, and every single student has their own personality. And I feel bad because I feel like I hurt some of my students unintentionally. And that's not what my aim was. It was just that I, on occasion, would lose control and I would yell. And that's not what you want to do as a teacher. But I think partially that is the education of teachers, because nobody seems to want to teach classroom management. And I don't understand why, because that is the number one thing I believe that teachers fail at and teachers struggle with. So I think one time I asked somebody, well, why don't they teach classroom management? And the answer I was told was because everybody teaches different ages.
So there's a common theme to it, right? So basically what you're saying, when you say classroom management, basically that's how to be a leader. So they're not teaching leadership in education. Women were not taught in general, predominantly in the educational system as women. I remember this really interesting conversation with my coach. and I'm one of 9 kids, like big family, right? And she was like, well, because, you don't know what being a leader is. And at this point in time, I had a multi-million-dollar company, I had a bunch of people working for me, but relationships were hot, and, it was messy. So I said, no, my father, my parents taught me how to be a leader. My parents were like advocates, and my dad was like a white Obama, in Chicago. And she goes, no, they taught you advocacy, not leadership. There's a difference.
Mm-hmm.
So clearly there is. So I think this is we could do a whole separate interview on this whole classroom management / leadership that people really need to know. And it's healthy boundaries. It's how to have respect. It's how to make sure people are being heard. It's about, it's like, and you always hear the kids who say, oh my God, the teacher's really hard because the teacher comes in like this, and then they turn out being their favorite teacher.
Yeah.
Happens all the time.
Yeah.
Same thing with parenting.
I've had some relationships, both with a boyfriend and with a female friend, where when I first met them, I hated them, and that's a strong word to use. And I don't mean it that way. Yeah. But I really did not like them.
No.
And then one of them was my TA in my organic chemistry class. And then I ended up dating him for a little while. So obviously I became friendly with him, and we would hang out together. And then the other one is a girlfriend of mine. And when I first met her, I was a little leery of her because she was a little different. Yeah. But now she's a really great close friend of mine. So, it is taking that judgment and releasing it and saying, I'm not going to judge because I'm not supposed to be judging. Mm. And everybody, including myself, has flaws. So anybody could judge me just like I could judge them. So it's trying to get through that and not accept that judgment and just take people for how they are.
So do you think that part of that is because, well, I'm going to bring up the achiever thing again. So do you think part of it is because your success has been so much of like a solo effort?
Yes, but I think that's partially who I am.
Yes.
Like I like to do things myself. Yes. So I can accomplish them in my way. And sometimes I'm a little too stubborn for other people. And like I just did headshots recently, and my friend did the headshots. He's a professional photographer. And when he was printing out the final headshot, I kept saying, okay, now move it up a little bit. Now move it to the left a little bit. No, too far, go back. Yeah. And he was like, oh my God, Karen, you are just too demanding.
Yeah, right. I know. Too bad, so sad. You want it the way you want it.
Yeah.
So what is your definition of success? I love this question. Everyone's so unique, man.
I think success is attaining your goals. Mm-hmm. So you have to establish a goal, and you have to work through it however you're working through it. And if you accomplish it, then you've reached success.
Mm-hmm. Right. And it doesn't matter what size. It's just more like setting the intention that you want to attain something. So what is your process? How have you been able to be so clear on setting goals? Is this something that you came out of the box with, or is this something you learned?
I think it's a mixture of getting mentorship from different people, whether they were classroom teachers or mentors or friends, guiding me, and then also my own interpretation of what my writing leads me to. Mm-hmm. Because my journaling leads me to think through what I'm going through so that I can then attain the goals that I'm going to try to achieve.
Oh, I love it. This is like a whole webinar that we're going to create on this one, because this is good stuff. I have workbooks for both for Claim Your Inner Badass and for Living Sexy Fit. They're done. I just haven't, because like the thing is, right, if we don't provide actionable tools, what good is it, right? Mm-hmm. Certainly it's like nice when people say we're inspirational. That's fine. I don't want to just be inspirational. I want to help people transform.
Yes, and that's exactly why in my first book, Winning the Breast Cancer Battle, Empowering Warriors and Guiding Loved Ones, I have those tips sections at the end of the book, because it literally gives people things that they can do physically and mentally to help them get through it. And one of the things is I have a 30-day positive mindset challenge. And if you go to my website, winningthebreastcancerbattle.com, you can sign up for free for the free gifts to get the 30-day positive mindset challenge.
I love that.
Yeah. And I suggest that you do it with one other person, because you need somebody to help keep you accountable. Because we all know when we go to the gym, some days we just don't want to go to the gym. But if we have a friend who's going to the gym, they're going to say, but I'm going, you have to come. And then on the other day, it's going to be reversed. So I suggest with the 30-day positive mindset that you have somebody to do it with, or even create a group to do it with.
Right. It's good because it pushes you. And the thing is like, even in my coaching practice, I'll say to people, like, they're like, oh, Kate, she's the greatest thing since cake and ice cream. I said, you love me now. Week 4 or 5, you're not really going to like me very much. Guess what? I'm going to keep showing up. You're not going to like me at all, but you're always going to love me. And I laugh, and they think, oh, how could I ever not like her? You know, but it happens, right? Because the people who hold you accountable, you are not going to like. And I think the benefit of being a personal trainer and the benefit of being a mom is I'm used to not really people liking me. We're holding the higher watch. We're holding the higher vision. It isn't my vision. Did you tell me that you wanted this success? If you told me that, I'm going to hold you to that unless you change your mind. And then we can have a whole nother conversation, right?
Yeah. And I mean, that's what coaching is about. It's not what I want. The person that's my client, it's all about who they are, and they have the answers. They just need you to help them draw it out.
Mm-hmm. And so that's the gift of the theater, you know, because I really feel like my gift is in languaging what people are saying. And then you say it back to them and they're like, oh my God, Kate, you're so smart. And basically all we're doing is saying what I heard was, what I think I heard you feel that I'm going to put words to is that. And then they go, oh, right? Yeah. It's the big ahas, right? And it's a messy process. And that's what I want people to, and I know you agree with me, that this process isn't supposed to be pretty. The journey isn't in a box with a big red bow. It is messy. So we need to embrace the mess.
Yeah, but the thing is, Kate, people are still stereotyped against counseling and coaching.
Yes.
Because we're told to keep our feelings inside or within our family and not let them out of our little box. But the thing is that, especially with COVID, so many people need help.
It's a crisis.
And it is. And I spoke to my primary care doctor, Kate, and he said to me, he says, Karen, he says, everyone is grieving. He said, everybody is grieving that they can't hug people anymore. And that is one of the main things that people need to talk about. And they're afraid. And so it's a matter of saying, you know, take that one step. Just trust in yourself and trust to get the help that you need. And if you don't need help, then you don't. But there are a lot of people.
Go help some other people. Like that's the thing too. It's like you maybe, you know, we lift as we rise. You know, half the time I'm always doing the downward sweep because that's the way that I keep myself balanced, right? We strive and we lift. It's just the way it rolls. For me, there's nothing higher than that. And I agree with you on the crisis right now. And particularly, I mean, I wrote an article about how men express grief and loss, and it got a lot of play because men don't have the support that women have. They don't. And they don't get the touch. They don't get the boo-hoo. They don't get the bitch sessions. They don't. Yeah. And so, I mean, that's why I love my work so much. You know, listen, I lost a brother and a son. So what does that say? That means, hello, Kate, pay attention. Young men need spiritual mama warriors. Be open to leaning in for them and help them speak about grief, loss, fear, failure, so that they can get that out and feel safe, because they're not going to do that through their friends. They're just not.
No. And men are told not to. That's how they're trained as they grow up in the US, that they, even more than women, have to keep their feelings inside. They're not allowed to cry. You know, they're not allowed to bitch and moan, as you said, you know, and they're not allowed to talk to anybody, you know, and that's what that we kind of drill into them as being the macho man, you know. And like, I know I listened to the Not So Perfect Plan, which is a podcast by Pete and Kim Vargas. Awesome. And Pete just said on there, like, he admitted at times he just cries, you know, and that's a natural human reaction.
Totally. Yeah. And I brought my kids up like that, but the world isn't like that, right? My boys are like, they're emotionally intelligent because I normalized it. But
Yeah.
but they had a hard time integrating that. They still do, you know, in some ways. I think part of that was the challenge for my oldest, you know, who passed, because he was like, wow, like everyone's suffering and no one's talking about it. Right?
Yeah.
It's freaking nuts. All right. So Phil, let me ask you a fun question. What is your pet peeve? Do you have a pet peeve? Is there something that some people do or say, something that just irritates you?
Well, when I was going through breast cancer, one of my doctors said to me that I was going to like my breasts more after I had my mastectomy because they were perfect and they were now implants and blah, blah, blah. And I just, every time I heard that, I was like, no. I like myself natural. I don't want anything unnatural in myself. And I want the fewest amount of surgeries I can possibly have. And I ended up getting an implant. And at the time, I didn't really comprehend the fact that that meant potentially every 10 years or so, I would need to have the implant replaced. But I was thin at the time. I am still thin. And I didn't have enough fat in my body for some of the other types of surgeries. And now I actually had a breast cancer scare about a month and a half ago, where I felt something in my breast, and I immediately went to see my oncologist, and she says, no, I don't think this is cancer, but we're going to get you an ultrasound. And the ultrasound happens, and the technician says to me, after she scans me, she goes, and how long have you said you've been feeling this? And I was like, well, just recently. She says, okay, well, you know, sometimes the radiologists like to come in and scan it themselves. And she leaves me, and I'm like, oh my God, I've got cancer again. And then the radiologist comes in and he scans me, and then he turns me to the machine and he says, this is the edge of your implant. And he goes, I'm not seeing a tumor. He goes, what I'm seeing is folding and ridging of your implant.
Oh my
So
gosh.
he says, you don't have to get it replaced right now. He says, but if it keeps folding and moving and gets deformed, then you're going to need to speak to a plastic surgeon.
Wow,
so,
that's intense.
You know, yeah. And the thing is that that's something also that is a pet peeve of mine, is that people think once you're done with your treatment, you're done. But cancer stays with you your whole life. And there are follow-ups that you have to go through and changes you have to make in your life and potentially in your diet as well. So it's not like a one and done thing. And that's what I thought at the beginning it was. I thought I would have my surgeries, I would get the cancer out, and I would be done. And it didn't work that way. And I also thought, I said to a girlfriend, I said, I'm not going to change. I'm going to be the same person. But you know what? I have changed, and I've grown, and I've become an author, which was a dream of mine from a childhood age. And I also have one of my very closest friends is a friend I met through a breast cancer support group.
Right. And we are different. We do come through different, deeper, wider. For me, less attached. It was like a weird thing for me. I remember going to grief counseling, and then I said to her, I go, I have a question for you. Like, I don't know if this is something that we should be worried about, but I'm not really feeling attached to things like the same way. You know, I'm like, this feels weird. And she kind of brushed it off. And then a few months later, I'm like, you know, it was kind of funny that you didn't really like pick up on that, like, you know, when I said that, she goes, you said that? I'm like, oh yeah. And what I realized was that being attached oftentimes is your ego clinging to past perceptions and judgments and things like that. So not being attached really meant for me that I wasn't ego-centeredly holding on to things that were not true. I didn't have the energy anymore. I was like, well, that's a stupid ass idea to hold on to all of that. Right? Yeah. So, I mean, I just think it's such a powerful conversation as we move through the grief cycle. What we're missing, though, in that, as you know, the Kubler-Ross definition of grief, she misses the last piece, which is transformation. Grief is transformational if you are willing to move into it. Yeah. It's so crucial. Yeah. And I just want to say to anyone out there that's struggling, please reach out to people. Realize you're going to be okay. You are going to be okay. And it's the place to start is to reach out to people and say, listen, I feel like shit, or I'm lonely, or just say the words. And in many ways, speaking it is the healing.
Yeah. And I also want to just mention that if you do reach out to a counselor, the counselor is trained in ways to help you. If you go reach out to a friend, they're not trained in that same way. So they can definitely help, but a counselor would train you, or a coach would train you, or not train you, excuse me, a coach or a counselor would be able to work with you in ways that a friend can't, or a family member can't.
Yeah, so true. So reach out to your professionals, and it just starts small. That's all I have to say about that, because I mean, I could go on and on about that. Because it's just the wounds that people are walking with, and it's being exacerbated by the loneliness and fear and financial insecurity and worldwide economic shifting.
Yep.
In a big way. So how, just a couple other questions. Can you name something or let me know of something that maybe people wouldn't know about you? A little thing?
I sometimes suffer from low self-esteem. I am very bold and confident, but I too have my moments when I question everything. And so I resort to calling mentors or friends and having people remind me of my remarkableness.
Oh, I love it. That's so beautiful.
Yeah, because I am a beautiful woman. I have a wonderful spirit, but sometimes I need my counselor to remind me of that. So I think it's something that's hard to accept because you want to be perfect, or at least I do.
Right.
I'm a perfectionist in a lot of ways. But I do sometimes have to take a step back and say, okay, you know what? You can get through this, but you need some help to get through this. And even though you have a weakness, you're still a strong and beautiful warrior.
It's beautiful. I love that. Thank you for that transparency. It's huge. So if you were to have a billboard that, you were allowed to put a big ass billboard somewhere, where would you put it and what would it say?
It would say, well, I was going to change it, but where would I put it? I would put it in New York City, Times Square Central, on the big screens up there. And I would say, you can do it. Have faith. You can do it.
Oh my God, that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
So I'm wishing you super, super good luck as you launch this book. And if you could just give the details on how people can find you, that would be great.
Sure. So you can type in Winning the Breast Cancer Battle. It's available through Amazon. You can also type my name, Karen Iverson, and it's spelled like the basketball player, Iverson. And if you type in my name into the Amazon search, my book, Winning the Breast Cancer Battle, will come up. And both the original book is available now, of course, and then the new book will be available in October. And if you go to my website, which is also winningthebreastcancerbattle.com, you can sign up for some free gifts, including the audiobook, which will be released in October as well.
Woohoo! There you go. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Listen, I am so psyched. I know we're going to be playing again because I think that there is so much that we can share and that we're both passionate about. And I just want to thank you so much for coming on this podcast with me today, Karen.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Kate. It really means a lot to me to get the word out because I really just want to help people. And so the more people buy the book and post a review, if they can, just post an honest review, it helps more people see the book and find it.
Absolutely. So it's all in the analytics with Amazon. So we as authors really super appreciate any reviews. It could just be a great read. It doesn't have to be this long review. So we appreciate your support as we grow our platform to help others. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
And thank you to all of you viewers and listeners. I appreciate your support. Please like the podcast below. And again, make today amazing. And again, what's the banner? What's the billboard, Karen?
You can do it. Have faith. You can do it.
Yeah, awesome. Namaste. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Ciao.
Bye.